We are walking right into the new year. It is December 30th. For whatever reason, my internet is not super with it today, which is actually kind of has happened now a couple of times, which is frustrating because it was working perfectly before this. That being said, we are doing some question and answers today. For anyone who is watching, if you have any specific questions about Fort Collins, real estate, Northern Colorado, lifestyles, that would be a great time to ask now, and we can answer live. Our man Connor Martin is still sideways, so I'm gonna tell him. There we go. But you got to figure that out.
I don't know what the heck is going on. I thought I had it figured out and stuff because on my side it looks like I'm horizontal, and so it's weird that it's flipping me upside down.
All right, well, whatever. We'll just deal with you as far as being vertical, and next time we'll jump on a little earlier. I thought we had it, but that's okay. Today we are doing some question and answers. So again, if you have any questions while we're going live, this would be the time to ask them again about Fort Collins, Northern Colorado real estate. We do have some prepared questions that we will go through here shortly. But Connor, anything planned for the new year? You excited? Anything coming up?
New Year's wise, nothing too exciting stuff. Had a nice busy weekend and everything like that. And so kind of just excited to be able to take a little bit of a little break and stuff and be able to kind of get caught up on some extra paperwork that I haven't been doing. And I got some plans to start doing some work on our master bathroom here pretty soon. And so just picking out tiling and stuff. And
Wow.
Our bathrooms, the grout's starting to go bad, cracking, pulling off. And so it's about time to actually go in and kind of do a little bit of update. And so kind of getting a little more excited for that.
Okay. We actually have to do the same thing. I don't know if we'll do it this year or next. We pretty much remodeled our entire house, with the basement and then our upstairs, but we still have our primary bedroom. And then actually I've been following a guy on Instagram. His name's Jose Patios.
Okay.
And he's out of Erie, but a lender buddy of mine posted a picture and then tagged him, and I went to their profile, and they're local to northern-ish Colorado, Denver area, and north, excuse me. And they have some really pretty cool stuff, but I'm sure it's extremely expensive.
Yeah.
So
now, anytime you start doing anything like that, it starts getting kind of pricey. So that's why I always tend to do my own work and stuff. And going to be thinking about taking out our clawfoot tub that no one ever uses in our house, and we're going to end up putting it in a little steam room potentially.
Ooh.
And trying to do some of those things. I'm kind of excited. I'm tired of sharing a steam room at Choose Fitness over in Loveland with 10 other people, and so kind of excited for that plan.
Okay, so you're gonna have to enclose that thing and seal it off.
Yep, that's kind of the plan. We'll do some really big glass panels all the way up to the ceiling, and so I think it should hopefully look pretty good by the end. Might take me 6.5 months to work on, but that's okay.
It's just you two for now. Hey, if you without kiddos and it's just the two of you out there, you've got other bathrooms you can use. So take your time, no huge rush. But all right, let's see here. Again, if you're just joining us, we are doing some live questions and answers. So if you have any questions specific about Fort Collins, real estate, Northern Colorado, lifestyle, anything like that, now is the time to ask us and we can answer them live. But we also have 10 questions we are going to go through that Connor and I are going to kind of parlay back and forth to each other of our own individual thoughts. So don't hesitate to ask those questions and we'll get to them. But we will start with number one. And I did share these with Connor ahead of time. Sometimes we go off the cuff and, I want to hear the initial opinion rather than anything that was kind of predetermined and thought out. But I thought with some of this kind of stuff, it would be good to be able to do a little bit of research just to kind of back what your thoughts were. So we did provide these to Connor ahead of time, but we will go through them now. What's one thing about Fort Collins most people don't realize but should?
Yeah, I mean, so for me on that side, one of the biggest things that, even I don't recognize, even living here in Loveland on that end, is just how Fort Collins isn't just a college town. I mean, it is completely surrounding with everything. in terms of just the community base. So they have something for everybody. So a lot of times, when you think about it, when you want to go and do concerts or you want to go out and, go to nice eateries, XYZ, a lot of people when they first come out here, even when I first came out here, Denver was kind of always the calling for going to concerts, going to big venues, and being immersed into that kind of a community. Fort Collins, I think, is one of the top places I've lived in terms of bringing people together with farmers markets, with concerts, with outdoor activities that they do in downtown Fort Collins. And I think that's something that, has been a big missing point in a lot of places I have lived. Loveland does an okay job, but I don't think it's to the same standard and quality that Fort Collins produces. I mean, just for example, they have the Fort Collins Farmers Market that goes through May to mid-November. You also have the Larimer County's Farmer Market, which goes from, I think it's sometime in the springtime all the way into October. So those are just a couple of little small things where I like going to farmers markets because you can go out and see local artists. They typically have bands that'll go out and play and be kind of a part of that as well. And so to me, I think that's a huge factor on that. One of the other big deals I really like is the Mishawaka. So Mishawaka is a amphitheater that is up the Poudre Canyon. It's kind of a tucked away, hidden kind of secluded area where unless you were really researching, certain music venues, you're probably not going to run into it. And so it's also a great place to go up and grab food, but they also have some really cool outdoor concerts during the nighttime that you can go out and really enjoy it. And we have plenty of other deals like that as well, from local concerts that they do on Friday nights down in Old Town Square. And I just think those are things that are really important because college students are only here for the winter time, and then they leave. And then, if the city didn't really focus on anything other than the college students, we wouldn't have as much as we do here. When I lived in Kansas, that was the problem. I mean, I lived very close to KU and, college town, but it was like all their attention went into the college students. There wasn't much else around it, surrounding the community. And so it's just a kind of a unique perspective. Bozeman was kind of that same way where they put a lot of their effort into the students, and then they would do some small things for the communities to get them together, but nothing compared to what Fort Collins brings in terms of what I've seen in the last 15 years.
Interesting. No, I think that's a great point. Because I think the backbone of Fort Collins is obviously Colorado State University, biggest employer, 35,000 students. So it's an extremely important piece of Fort Collins and the vitality of Fort Collins. But that's a great perspective. Something that I think people don't they don't realize is that Fort Collins is really a combination. When you are living in Fort Collins, you're really living in the surrounding areas like Windsor, Timnath, Loveland. We're going skiing at those infinity slopes in Loveland. We went to the main event that was in Windsor yesterday. Ladera development in Timnath is just on the other side of Harmony 925. And so while it's Timnath, it really does feel like a part of Fort Collins. And so, yes, Fort Collins has a population of 170,000 people, but when you take into consideration Timnath, Windsor, Loveland, and Fort Collins, I didn't include Greeley. I didn't include Johnstown or Wellington because I felt like that was kind of like not as much of a day-to-day operation as the others are. And so when you take into consideration those four areas, you're looking like at 300 to 315,000 people that have those type of amenities. So it's really a combination area that if you're living in Fort Collins, you're really going to benefit from these other communities that are abutting Fort Collins.
No, I totally agree on that.
All right. Number 2, how competitive do you expect the Fort Collins real estate market to be in 2025?
For me on that side, I mean, we've seen it being very competitive, obviously, since a year after COVID on that end. That was the peak of it all. Everything got really bumped up then. And really, it's the remote workers that really kind of changed the dynamic of, I think, the Fort Collins real estate market to a certain regard. We obviously have Colorado State University that is kind of the staple, building blocks of how Fort Collins has kept its inventory, how it's had the influx of people in and out over the years. But But it seems like it had a pretty big change when COVID came in. People started to be able to work remotely. People started looking at the quality of life that they have. And so to me, Fort Collins hits pretty much all the check boxes most people are looking for when they are looking for a new city to live in, especially when it comes to kids, family, retirees, the single lifestyle. There's some opportunity there that for everybody, where in some of the other places that I've lived, it just didn't have that same deal. Bozeman, Montana was very nichey, very kind of uppity on that side. So community was really hard to get into. Kansas was on the complete other spectrum, where it's just people are busy there. A lot of blue collar people where I at least worked and lived it. And so there just wasn't very much there to really offer for the community. And so I think Fort Collins really hits the broad spectrum of everything that someone is truly wanting on that side. Great weather, right outside for hiking activities. And then you got family friendly oriented activities as well within the city. So no matter what, you're always going to have something that you can do all the time. And that's one thing that I've really liked and has driven me to stay here versus move somewhere else on that end. And so to me, I think the market's going to stay strong. Our inventory is low. It's kind of stayed low for the last while. A lot of the homes that are out there, we just don't have very much. And the only thing that's really going on, and I got to really see it this weekend over in Rain Dance in Windsor. We went and toured some True Mark homes. And I will tell you, with that inventory that these builders are bringing in, that's really all we have left, except for some deferred maintenance houses right now. Obviously, we're kind of in that Christmas, New Year's timeframe, so people aren't listing stuff just yet. But I think for 2025, even with the interest rates as they have been so far creeping up, I think we're going to be staying pretty stable here coming 2025, and potentially we'll stay steady or see a little bit of an increase potentially. It really, I think, just depends on how many more individuals are making that move because they have the remote jobs or they're kind of retiring on that side. And we're obviously not seeing as many people moving away as well, at least from what I have seen. And so there's kind of that unique mix to where I think we're going to continue to see pretty steady equity in houses, and we're not going to see any major changes and differences like I have been seeing over where I used to live in Parker, Colorado. The houses are sitting there. People aren't moving as much over in that area. And so Fort Collins, I think, just has a more stable market compared to other places here in Northern Colorado or in Colorado in general.
Okay. Yeah. And, as far as competitiveness, it's been interesting to watch, some of our listings move right away. Some of our listings sit for a little bit. How much showings happen comparatively to offers. And,
Yep.
I think buyers sense that. I was
gonna say, Pat, you lost your video there for a sec.
Buyers sense that there's not the urgency that there once was, and so they could take their time and really be a discerning buyer that says, what, I really want specific things and I'm willing to wait, and I'm not going to jump at the first opportunity. But so we're seeing a little bit more buyer patience, which is great. I think that's good. Houses sitting a little bit longer, so there's some negotiation, and then some that move really quickly. So I think we're going to see a lot of the same. We've seen this plateauing since mid 2022 as far as prices go. And I think we'll probably see that still for probably, a good while. And that's not a bad thing. And I've talked about it in other videos. I've talked about it in market updates, but the reversion to the mean as far as our average annual appreciation, when we had those 2 years, like you were discussing about COVID and, 20%, 18% appreciation, it's been flat for the last two years or so, which is good. It's allowing people's incomes to increase, catch up. But I would say that competitiveness comparatively to 2024, very similar against 2021 and early 2022, substantially less. We've got a lot more inventory than we did then. We have fewer buyers that are interested in buying comparatively to like, hey, if I can get a 2.5% interest rate, no matter what I buy, I make a mortgage. Now you look at 6.5%, you're like, I really got to understand, can I afford this? So comparatively to 2024, it'll be a very similar competitiveness market comparatively to 2021 and 2022. it's night and day difference comparatively, with it just being a lot more lax. So parlaying onto that, is Northern Colorado still one of the best places to invest in real estate next year?
Yeah, I mean, to be on that side, I still think it's a great investment opportunity. You know, with Fort Collins having the stability of the Colorado State University, also having more manufacturing jobs coming into Northern Colorado, new businesses coming in here. I think Northern Colorado is a lot more stable and has a lot more availability to improve over time compared to other parts of Colorado. With places like Parker, again, Elizabeth, Colorado, some of the places on the southern side of Colorado, they just don't have as much opportunity. You know, they don't have as much growth going on as well. I mean, Fort Collins is obviously still a little bit tight because of development and land use in Fort Collins. But I think Fort Collins, because we are so close to Colorado State University, that plays a major factor in just the quality of what brings the investment side of marketing in here, with the influx of people coming in and out constantly, and then the availability of people who really find this as one of the top 10 places to live in Colorado, in my opinion, really brings and drives the factor up even more here, to where I think for the long run, at least so far, and even from my mentor's perspective, Fort Collins has always been a major place to invest and be able to put money away into, knowing that it's going to be a little bit more stable than some other areas in the United States.
Okay. I'll look at it in two different kind of prongs. And that is going to be one, like actual investment, non-owner occupied, absentee owner investment. And then two, as far as looking at a personal purchase, a home as an investment, which, you could have a conversation of whether you should view your personal house as an investment or not. It just historically it has ultimately been that. Well, yes, psychologically don't view it as that, view it as your shelter, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to look at it two different ways. Number one, as far as the absentee owners, I think we're starting to see this long tail of rents finally start to whip and catch up. So mortgages and rents have been at this huge delta, biggest in history, comparatively to what the mortgage for that same house would be comparatively to what that rent would be. And the mortgages haven't really decreased. You can either decrease it by the interest rate or the price of the home. Prices have been relatively stable. Interest rates have been relatively stable as well. But rents are starting to really see a tick up. I'm starting to see, $1,000 per bedroom for 2 and 3 bedroom type houses. Now, if you get to a 4 bedroom, you're probably going to get that down to closer to maybe $750 to $950 per bedroom, depending on the quality. And those are just different ranges. So we're finally starting to see the rents side of things really pick up, and we're starting to see double-digit appreciation on that. So as far as investments, we just worked with the client who bought 2 new builds where the purchase price was $460,000 for a single family detached house in Fort Collins. DM me, comment us, talk to Connor, talk to myself for more information. It's a cool product. We are definitely pushing it. But the rents on those are going to be between $2,600 to $2,800. So it really is one of the few houses that meets the gold is the 1% rule, which in Topeka, Kansas, I think you could probably match that. Which what that is really quickly is you buy a house for $500,000, the expected rent should be $5,000 per month. That doesn't exist in Colorado or Fort Collins or anywhere that I know. Probably the closest would be in Greeley. Greeley would probably be the closest to that. But one of the rules that I try to live by is the 0.5% and above rule. 0.5% and below, I'm not going to touch it, not even going to look at it. 0.5% and above, I'm really going to consider it. And as you can get that 0.75. So for numbers' sake, if I'm buying a $500,000 house, I better be at least getting $2,500 a month in rent. So I do think that those are opportunities, that prices are remaining flat for investors, and the rents that they could expect now and over the next 12 to 24 months are going to see pretty significant appreciation or increases to catch up to those mortgages. We're already seeing that with some of the product that we have personally. As far as a personal house, I would say baseline is if you're going to live there for 5 to 10 years, it's a phenomenal investment. If you're going to live there for 2 or 3 years, it is a very risky investment. And as I discussed, the prices have remained relatively flat. And so if you need to sell, if you buy and need to sell in 2 years, Connor, you're working with a set of clients who are doing this right now. And we've worked with a couple of different clients over the years that have bought and then unfortunately have had to sell and, maybe even had to bring money to the table to pay off all the closing costs and all that kind of stuff. So I would say 2 to 3 year time horizon, really a risky investment. 5 to 10 years, I think it's a phenomenal investment. Principal pay down, appreciation, all that good stuff.
Yep.
What are the best number 4? What are the best areas to buy a home in Fort Collins right now for the long-term growth?
For long-term growth, for me on that side, I mean, I'm kind of a individual who enjoys not being in the new area of Fort Collins. The main area that, tends to be the new development is the northeast side of Fort Collins. You have Bloom out there. You have a couple other great neighborhoods that are in development right now. And we should see some other ones, hopefully in the future. Montava, hopefully will be coming in at some point. And so, in my opinion, one of the best places that I think, is a good place to buy, especially for the next few years, kind of around that Harmony corridor, Ziegler being near some of those neighborhoods out there, I think is a good spot to be. There's no more really buildable lots in that area. So finding something there where it's kind of a desirable spot, that's where I'm kind of seeing the higher priced homes that are appreciating a little bit quicker on that side. And they tend to go under contract a little bit quicker because inventory is low in those areas. So much easier right now to go out to the northeast side of Fort Collins and find a little bit cheaper of a home. And so to me, that would be my first section, just because I like the build quality of the homes out there. And then they also have some really good amenities over on that Harmony corridor. The worst part about that area is obviously Harmony Road. It's getting busier and busier because it's access out to Windsor, out to Timnath, some of those areas. And so it's becoming a main corridor for getting in and out of Fort Collins, even more than it used to be. And so that's the only downside to it. But I think the neighborhoods and having that area being just kind of built out at this point is a great spot to be, because you already know it's got everything you possibly need. And that hopefully later down the road, the northeast side of Fort Collins gets more built out as more commercial buildings come in. I think that'll become a lot better opportunity, maybe in the next 10 years or so.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. I think Northeast is definitely at its beginning stages of becoming a really cool place. We've got 45 miles of paved trail throughout Fort Collins with another potentially 30 miles. I think it's 30 or 75 miles. I think it's either going to be 75, but I think it's another 75 or total 75. Anyways, a lot of miles of additional paved trail coming. And a lot of that's going to be on the northeast side of town. But again, to your point, it's kind of like it's a ways out. So if you want to be kind of a first mover of the area, Montava, Bloom, Rudolph Farms, Prospect and I-25, that entire northeast area, I think you've got to have a long horizon. But I agree with you along the Harmony corridor. I do like that, but I would actually go not against that by any means, because I agree with you.
Yeah.
But additionally, I would say Midtown. I really like that Midtown area, Drake and College. I think with the King Supers that's being built there, with Spradley Bar that's going away, and 4 lots being developed there. The apartments, the CSU Vet Hospital that just built building a $250 million facility right there. And then the Foothills Mall, if it finally gets redeveloped by the McQuinneys, I just think that it's got all the amenities there. It's got all the infrastructure there. It's going to finally see some really cool activity, walkability, bikeability. So I'm a big fan of that kind of Midtown area.
No, I definitely agree. That'd be my number 2 on my list that I had.
Yeah, I think it's poised to see some good appreciation over the next 5 to 10 years. How will the national housing market trends affect Fort Collins and northern Colorado? And I would say national housing trends, our expectations are that it's going to be a historic low. That's all of the perceptions on sales volumes. Interest rates are projected to stay in the sixes. How does that affect Fort Collins and the Fort Collins and northern Colorado real estate market, Connor?
So to me on that side, I think it's going to be a benefit to Fort Collins on that side. With the rising interest rates, Fort Collins, from what we already discussed before, I think has the sustainability because of the Colorado State University. So there's a lot of flexibility here that you don't get in other counties or cities that don't have colleges. So I think having our market being a little bit more strong compared to the rest of the United States and the trends that are going on here versus there, I think is going to just help us overall. We've also seen the continuum of migration from these big metropolitan cities like Colorado Springs, Denver, some of those big areas where people are kind of just fed up with, the city living, being close and tight to people. We're seeing that trend happen where there's a lot of individuals leaving those metropolitan areas in search of the smaller town communities that have all the amenities, which because of Fort Collins being so close to Loveland, Windsor, and Timnath, we kind of hit pretty much everything you could possibly need in a town, plus having extra benefits as well that a Denver used to kind of supply all of, and maybe Fort Collins and Loveland didn't have nearly as much of it. But I think it's kind of starting to even out now with everyone moving away from these metropolitan districts and moving away because they have the remote jobs. If that ever changes, I know the trends will completely change then if people have to move back to wherever their jobs are at relocation wise. But I think overall Fort Collins has a really kind of a lead on most other cities comparative to the rest of Colorado and the rest of the United States.
Well, I'm with you on a lot of that, but I think one of the things that you said that really kind of sparked my a change of thought would be, depending on politics too. If, like you said, if people are required to go back into the office versus being able to remote work, I do think that Fort Collins benefited, as did a lot of these kind of secondary and tertiary markets when the ability to remote work happened, that people could move away from the Los Angeleses, the Houstons, the Boston, New York Cities, Austin, Texas, and were able to move away. If there's some requirement of going back into the office, that could have an impact negatively for the Fort Collins, Northern Colorado market. Now, on the flip side, I do think, though, it's not a boom or bust city. So, kind of like Greeley is, where it's really reliant upon oil and gas. And we aren't really hampered by one individual industry. Now, additionally, again, if politics come into play, and let's just say Colorado State University, which is a tier 1 research institute, sees a reduction of grant funding or federal dollars to support some of its programs, we could see employment loss there. Or so those are things that we just kind of have to be watching and be understanding that could have an impact. But overall, I think, Fort Collins, even during 08 and 09, went down 0.5 and 2% respectively during the great housing recessions. Our housing stayed very strong and stable. And then additionally, with our land use policies and how long of a horizon it is for these houses to come online, even if we wanted to push the pedal to the metal to release houses, it's still about a 2 to 4 year process for these developers to go. So it's just a little bit of a bottleneck. So unfortunately, for those that want to move here and potentially see prices reduced, we just don't have a ton of inventory coming on the market. And a lot of that is being supplied by new development, but it's still just kind of a long horizon. So Fort Collins specifically has the most difficult land use reviews. From there, Windsor and Greeley are pretty much not like open season by any means, but are releasing a lot more new development quicker, as is Timnath. So the surrounding areas can see a lot more new development happen. But overall, I think the national housing trends could have some impacts, but nothing that is immediately happening because of, like I said, interest rates or sales or anything like that, because ours are already so minimal based off of inventory that's available. It would be the bigger things that could potentially have results with changing remote work policies on a tier, research institutions and things of that nature.
Yep.
What do you think Fort Collins why do you think Fort Collins continues to rank as one of the best cities to live in? Now, caveat, we're not number one. We haven't been ranked number one recently. We've gone up and down lists. I just recently did a video as that we are one of the most underrated cities in the United States. Underrated cities in Colorado and hidden gems or something like that. The video will be released here shortly, but they were kind of interesting. But why do you think Fort Collins continues to rank as one of the best places to live?
Yeah, I mean, it's a multitude of factors on that side. I mean, I'm going to sound like someone who's going to continually say the same things over and over again, but having Colorado State University here, I think, plays a major factor in it staying as a top 10 school. One, it provides a young population.
Top 10 what?
Oh, sorry. I probably said top 10 schools, but I meant to say top 10 cities.
I would love it if CSU was a top 10 school. I mean, I graduated from there, but it is not.
No, it is not, unfortunately. But yeah, I think having Colorado State University here plays a major factor on why this has stayed a top 10 city or has been a high ranking city in the overall cities of the United States. We also have some really great weather here. Most people think of great weather when they think of California, but Colorado, I think, especially northern Colorado, has a very similar climate, except for the fact that we do get a little bit colder come the winter time. But shoot, I mean, this winter so far, I mean, I've gone out and been able to go out and play golf for the last 2 months. I've been able to go out and play some airsoft. I've been able to go out and go ride my motorcycle, go do some downhill mountain biking. And we haven't seen much snow yet. I mean, it's pretty typical that we'll start seeing it come, January, February is kind of our typical time when we finally start seeing the snowstorms. But having this great weather brings out so many individuals out here, 300 days worth of sun. It's just fantastic. Compared to everywhere else I've lived, this is definitely one of the spots that I've enjoyed the most living in. Another big factor is we do have some really great schools here as well, especially for elementary through high school. We have some great opportunities, great schools that have great programs that really gets kids immersed into different areas of jobs, from getting them interested in engineering, getting them interested in woodworking. I mean, there were a lot of schools that I went to when I was younger that didn't have all the opportunities that I've seen here in Fort Collins that these schools offer. Also, Fort Collins being a school choice as well, I think plays a major factor. Out of all the cities I've lived in, this is the only area that I've ever heard school choice of. I know that wasn't really probably something in my generation going to school wise that was even available. You just had to go where you had to go. But I think that also plays a major part. Having vibrant art community, music community, the brewery scene, I think maybe brings in a couple people here and there. I'm not really sure on that one since I don't drink as much as I used to. And we have low crime rates here. We just have a very peaceful, quiet community. And it's kind of a commuter's paradise for kind of what you were saying. We're surrounded by all these cities. Yes, Fort Collins is kind of the epicenter of everything, but everything is about 25 minutes away from you. I mean, at the furthest, unless you want to go down to the Denver area, DIA and stuff. We have a local airport over here in Loveland, which is nice. And so we just have a lot of factors at play here that keep it in that top city ranking that you wouldn't see in most cities around the United States.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think the sunshine's great. Last night there was a few houses down. There were some girls playing in the driveway at like 8:00 at night. And I'm like, it is December 29th and it's 8:00 at night and they're out playing in the dark. It's, I've seen other people that are playing, standing outside by their outside fires, but yeah, overall, I think you hit a lot of them, crime, schools. I think the thing that really hampers us on all of these lists is housing costs.
Yep.
And I would say that's the general, and it's a big ranking factor in these lists. So if we stay, kind of level for a while, which we have, and some which incomes have increased over the last 2-3 years, we're going to see our housing cost ranks do a little bit better than what they have.
That's what I'm kind of hoping for.
Yeah, because that's always it's been the biggest deterrent of why we don't rank as well on some of these lists. Everything else, like our happiness factor, our overall life satisfaction, our weather, like you said, schools, unemployment rate, employment base, people who have a college degree, all of these different like ranking factors always has Fort Collins doing very well. So I would say all of those are continue to do well and continue to be a reason why people find themselves wanting to live in Fort Collins or moving out of Fort Collins and then moving back. It's the grass isn't always greener type of thing. But to your point with like school of choice, yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing to understand about Fort Collins. Could have been an answer for number one because we have clients that moved here from Houston, that people would move to a specific neighborhood and pay millions of dollars for smaller type houses just so they could be in this school system for their kids. And so, there's lots of different things. Each area has something to consider. But to your point, my mom went to Costa Rica for 3 weeks and they were sitting out by the beach and it was amazing weather, but I was looking outside my door and I was like, it's kind of sunny and 60 and I just went on a hike here. So we've had a very tame winter to say the least. And so far it's been pretty awesome. All right, number 7. And again, I want to chime in. There's people who have joined the live. If you have any questions that you want us to specifically answer, we are going to be here for probably another 10 to 20 minutes or so, depending. But we have a few other questions that we've kind of prepared. But if there's anything specifically that you want to ask and have answered live, do so in the comments, and we'd be happy to do that. But number 7, what's one big mistake buyers or sellers are likely to make in 2025? You know what? I'm gonna steal the show here. I'm gonna go first to these last few ones so that
perfect. Let's do it.
We'll switch it up a little bit. All right, number 7. What's one big mistake? Okay, I personally think I think the biggest mistake buyers or sellers are do. Buyers timing them. There's two different things. Buyers trying to time the market is something that you are never going to be able to do well. Time in the market versus timing the market. So I would say if you're waiting for interest rates or if you're waiting for prices to come down, that is a gambler's game. And I feel like hopefully interest rates come down, maybe prices stay stagnant, or maybe they come down a touch or a smidge. There's been some reports that I've seen that Fort Collins could come down as much as 1% on our value. So the question that you would ask yourself on waiting for prices to come down is at what price would it take for you to get into the market? And is that likely? 1%? Sure. So you're talking about a $650,000 house and then going down 1%. So it'd be $648,000 or $644,000. So if that $6,000 difference is enough for you, then yeah, sure, wait. But if it's 10%, you have to drop $60,000. Is that likely? So I would say the biggest risk for buyers is timing the market. And then I would say the biggest mistake sellers could do is having that same 2021, 2022 mentality of it doesn't matter what I do for my house. I'm just going to put it onto the market and it's going to sell. Well, the reality is I think the people that are taking the most time to prepare their house, market it properly, get it staged and then pricing it accordingly, those are going to be the winners as far as the sellers go. Those sellers that, believe like, it doesn't matter. I can just put it on my house, throw it on the market and it's going to sell. That doesn't exist anymore. So I would say sellers taking their time to properly market and sell their house is probably the biggest thing that they could do for that. How about you?
No, and I think we're pretty much on the exact same page on that side for buyers, especially. It is the fact that everybody wants to kind of play the game and want to see if they can wait on that side. And, one example we had and stuff on that is like right before Christmas, a little bit before Christmas, right in between the Thanksgiving and Christmas time, things were pretty dead. It kind of seemed like things were kind of pretty slow, kind of stagnant a little bit. Homes were really sitting for a little bit on that side. And then right after Christmas, a lot of these homes, again, I just went out and did 25 showings this weekend with 4 different clients. And out of those 25 homes, I'm pretty sure we saw about 10 to 14 of them go under contract within this weekend. And so to me, it's just amazing. It's a week by week thing. So it's just like, I'd rather almost go take my money and go up to Blackhawk and gamble on that than trying to gamble if I'm going to go out there and wait another week and the house is going to be less on that side. My idea is you go in there, offer up a price, try and play the negotiation game. That's where you're truly going to get your rewards and benefits from it. And if you have a savvy realtor that watches and pays attention to the market on that side, we can find and see those deals as long as obviously the house or property or land or whatever you're looking for kind of fits your needs. And that's really the major factor that you should be looking at is, does this actually fit me or not? And not be thinking about the time frame. And, the longer you wait, the likelihood of it going down by any means is pretty rare and stuff. And so it's really just about catching that seller on the right day and seeing what they have to say when it comes to an offer coming in. And we're exactly the same on the seller side as well. Is, the one thing that I'm seeing a lot of, especially in the last probably 6 months or so, it's just been, sellers just going out there and putting their house on the market thinking that it's just going to sell like it did 2 years ago. It's really not happening anymore. The average time frame we're seeing is typically around that 45 to 65 day time frame to actually get the house under contract. And most of these houses that we are seeing are pretty overpriced for what they are. When you're seeing an $800,000 house with linoleum countertops and trashed out floors and holes in the walls, there's a lot of individuals that are just pushing it out there, wanting to get it sold. And then the home sits for 200 days and they're wondering what's going on. Getting the house prepped, getting it ready, having a stager come in, doing the steps to get the house actually sold, I think is what's going to truly benefit the seller at the end of the day and maximize hopefully their profits at the end of the day as well. And, we did discuss about it as well too, but the other thing that sellers, you can't help it, unfortunately, but some people just have to move or they have to go do something because of kids, job, relocation. So like you said, we've seen a lot of people from 2022, 2021, when they went out and bought their house. And now all of a sudden they're coming back after 2 years trying to think that they're going to want to sell it. And in reality, that more than likely they're going to be lucky if they break even at the end of the day if they bought during those time frames. It's just the equity has not built up enough to afford the closing costs, commissions, and everything like that. So I think those are the 2 major factors that I've just been seeing. And so if you are thinking about moving, making sure that you guys know the time frame at which you're moving and knowing that, depending on your decision making or what ends up happening in your life, just knowing what could potentially happen.
Oh, that's a better screen. Now they can see our faces a little bit better.
Yeah, that was good.
All right. Let's see here. How is new construction shaping the future of housing in Fort Collins and Northern Colorado? I will jump back in. There are definitely plenty of developments happening in Fort Collins, Northern Colorado, Timnath, Windsor, Wellington, Loveland, all over the place. And I would say it is definitely the only true source of consistent flow of inventory on the market, like you discussed. There's spec builds. There's not a ton of optionality with many of the builders. Toll Brothers, TrueMark has a little bit of that. Richmond to a certain extent, depending on the price point. But a lot of these are going to be specs, so it's at least inventory coming onto the market. The most exciting development that I have going on right now, I think, is Bloom in College, Mulberry. That price point is super attractive for people. It's single family detached houses built by a local builder or developed by a local developer and builder. And so I would say it is the constant flow of inventory onto the market that people can expect. Sometimes, obviously, with the build, you're kind of more on the outskirts, the tertiary areas, rather than kind of right in the heart of things. So you would expect to a certain degree, a little bit more travel and commuting in these developments, but overall, it's just the only consistent flow of inventory.
No, I totally agree with you on that side. I think Bloom is definitely one of my top neighborhoods that I like to go out and show in Fort Collins, depending on the price point. And it's the nice part is Bloom in that area is pretty dang close to the downtown Fort Collins area comparative to if you were like, oh gosh, hey, this is our price point, and you're looking at Fort Collins price points. They're pretty pricey, and so all of a sudden you're starting thinking, well, maybe I want to be over in Loveland, maybe I want to be Windsor, maybe I want to go and jump across Timnath and stuff. Bloom in that area of Fort Collins, I think, is a really good secondary option that still keeps you close to town comparative to some of the other towns that you would end up looking at alternatively. And I think it just brings, and here's my hopes with the new builds that are going on, because I'm seeing it more and more even on some of the listings we've had, when we get reviews back, there's a lot of individuals right now that are saying, I'd rather pay a little bit more or go a little bit further out to get a newer home, to get more for your money, actually get, quartz countertops, get new cabinets, get the new flooring, get new carpet and some of those things. And I'm starting to see a lot of deferred maintenance on the older homes in Fort Collins, people who just have only lived in there for a few years or then going back and reselling, did nothing to the home, and they're selling it for more than what they purchased it for. It's all public records. You can kind of see that. Most people are savvy enough these days to go in and look at those things. And so I think hopefully from what I'm maybe going to see here in the next few years is that if the new builds continue to be our consistency of inventory, that a lot of these pre-existing homes should hopefully kind of want to start competing a little bit more, in the way that they need to compete is either by reducing the price point to be competitive with these new builds, or, God forbid, if, doing remodeling on a home wasn't so expensive, maybe that people are going to start kind of considering those options as well. But I also understand how expensive it is to go in and remodel a home. That's why I'm doing my own bathroom. It's expensive to do those things. And so I'm hoping that kind of plays a factor at some point in some of these older neighborhoods, especially in Midtown and some of those spots where people are going to start putting a little bit more money into their property so that they can bring a little bit more equity out of it, hopefully at the end of the day when they sell it.
Yeah. I always talk about, if people control labor or materials, or have, can source that very affordably, then remodeling makes a lot of sense. But if they don't, it's really tough. It's a gambler's game. But if you're living in the house and you want to enjoy that remodel, I am all for it. Go do it for yourself, not for the back end sale of the home. But there are, of course, steps: painting, flooring, light fixtures,
the minimum stuff.
the not the tens of thousands of dollar type of remodels. But it's new construction is definitely it's an attractive price point too, because they also are offering incentives too, because they can, they're just selling in volume, so lenders are offering pretty decent incentives. So it's definitely a pretty desirable sector for buyers right now. Do you see 9 and 10, and we'll finish up, do you see more people relocating to Northern Colorado in 2025? Why or why not? And I guess I'll keep going. Sorry.
I was gonna say, if you want to go first.
I keep forgetting, and I'll come back here. There we go. My connection, my cam link. I would say, it's weird because we deal with the net migration. Let's talk about net migration. Inflow versus outflow. People moving out of Fort Collins, people moving into Fort Collins. And we've seen historically anywhere between 0.5 to 1.5% annual population growth. But we've seen relatively flat population growth over the last 12 to 18 months. And that is a net zero, essentially, of net migration. So as many people moving out of Fort Collins as moving in. But I think that's a really interesting number to consider, because anecdotally, I don't believe a lot of the people that are moving out of Fort Collins are moving out of Northern Colorado. They're just moving to Windsor, Loveland, Timnath, like we just discussed, new builds that offer an opportunity for them to buy in and give them a little bit more bang for their buck possibly than Fort Collins does. But we still have a lot of people moving into Fort Collins. So the Northern Colorado area is definitely growing. And I would say what do I see in 2025 for the Northern Colorado area? Is more people relocating, moving here? Absolutely. As far as Fort Collins specifically, yeah, I think we're going to see this kind of really calming down, especially because we're now at 170, 180,000 people. Maintaining a 1.5% population growth really isn't probably super healthy, but having a closer, but like 0.25 to 0.75% annual population growth is probably more attainable and realistic. And I would say we should see population growth from a net migration coming in. It'll just be at a slower rate than what we're historically used to seeing.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of on that same page as well. I think we're going to continue to see growth, maybe, always in Fort Collins, I believe on that side. I think there's always going to be the influx and outflux from Fort Collins, but I think Northern Colorado as a whole, we're going to continue to see some pretty major growth here. Some of our towns, I know Patrick didn't put it in there, but Johnstown is starting to really ramp up its area and really trying to make it a affordable place with the amenities that some of the farther northern Colorado towns have to offer. They also have Windsor, which is putting in some pretty incredible neighborhoods. I got to spend a whole bunch of time out in Rain Dance in Windsor, Colorado, which is probably in my top 5 neighborhoods just because of what they offer amenity-wise. There's some other really great neighborhoods that are a couple of years behind Rain Dance over in Timnath, Colorado as well. So I think a lot of people are starting to prioritize lifestyle over proximity to jobs and centers. And so now people are sitting there recognizing, hey, we don't need to be living 30 minutes from Denver now. We can push it out a little bit farther. Or, hey, we don't need to be in Fort Collins. We could still enjoy the amenities of Fort Collins, but be on the outskirts of Fort Collins and the other towns. And so I think that plays a really big factor in it. And I think here in Northern Colorado, because we are still a small community, even with all the towns we have here, I think you said was roughly maybe in that 300,000, 350,000 population. Our crime rate is still low comparative to Denver and to Colorado Springs area and comparative to a lot of other big metropolitans. I think that's been playing a pretty big deal to a lot of individuals who are family or retiring or trying to find that right fit as well. And I also think, and I used to make fun of it back when I started my YouTube channel, especially in Loveland. And, I think Northern Colorado is getting more in tune to it, but having high-end healthcare facilities here as well, as I think is playing a major factor. We got hospitals all over the place here, it feels like now. We got multiple UC Health, we have a lot of banners. And so healthcare out here is fantastic. We just got a new VA hospital over in Loveland. And so I think that also plays a big factor on the retiree side. So I think we're bringing in a little bit of a more mixture demographic than we used to probably say 8-9 years ago, because just how many more amenities we're bringing in. And I think Fort Collins and Northern Colorado in general is really prioritizing that lifestyle versus surrounding everything with the job communities. They're starting to want to bring in more trails, more biking, making it just more community friendly, which, some towns you just don't see that in. There's a lot of towns that have stayed stagnant for years because they just don't put the development and infrastructure in to supply that for the community to where they can go out and meet each other, go out and spend time with each other. So I think Fort Collins, Northern Colorado is really going to see continued growth from out-of-state individuals, and I would 100% recommend it. I've left Colorado 3 times and I've come back now 3 times. And so it's hard to leave here once you're here. And I've made mistakes trying to think that there was something better out there in this world, better cities and stuff. But here it's pretty fantastic once you get actually built into the community. And it's really easy to meet friends here comparative to other places I've been where everybody here is a transplant to a certain regard. There's only a few of you, just like you, who have been here your whole lives and stuff, but there's a lot of us out there that have traveled around, seen different places. And this is one spot I really consider is just probably one of the most friendly communities that I've got to participate in over the last decade.
Great. I love it. The perspectives, I think, was important for this question and answer session because, where you come from and your background and life experiences are quite a bit different than mine. And just a second. What's up?
I got this on the floor when it's going away to
you.
Yeesh.
Little tack on the floor. You say hi real quick for 2 seconds and then get out of here because we're just about finished up. Say hi real fast.
Hi.
Okay. That's Connor. Remember Connor? All right.
Oh, yeah, Connor.
Hi.
All right. Can you shut the door behind you real quick? All righty. And okay, so our last one that we are going to talk about, we will give 30 seconds each, our elevator pitch of what this answer is, because we've got running low on time, but is what role does CSU play in driving the Fort Collins housing market? And like I said, we've talked about this quite a bit already, but ultimately it is the backbone of Fort Collins, about 8,000 employees or 7,000 to 8,000 employees. And then we've got 7,000 to 8,000 employees, 35,000 students. You guys, get out of here. Go. Okay. Go. Seriously, go. 35,000 students. Shut the door behind you, please. 35,000 students. So it's pretty significant as far as the economic drivers for the housing market. I've got 5 more seconds because I already took it with 20 back. Very important, has always been important to Fort Collins, will remain vital to the health of Fort Collins now and into the future.
All right, perfect. And then mine is pretty similar. So I think it's the backbone of Northern Colorado, especially Fort Collins. It really drives the rental properties. It also brings in other families that surround their kids who are going to college. There's a lot of people and families now that travel with each other when their kid goes to college. They're also bringing family along, grandparents, XYZ as well on that side. CSU also is one of the big research programs out here, so it brings a lot of great minds into this city as well. So I believe that really provides the backbone for amenities and having individuals who are really focused on making Northern Colorado better. And then they also partnership with a lot of different sustainability groups, innovation groups. And so Fort Collins is on the forefront of technology and making the city better year in and year out. And so I think CSU will always play the major factor to Fort Collins, Northern Colorado, and making it truly what it is here.
I love it. Well, I can't believe we actually had a fair amount of folks come in and out of the show today, but no questions. But that's all right. We had a list of 10 that hopefully provided some decent insights to Fort Collins, the real estate market, Northern Colorado. Connor has a great perspective, different than mine, and I appreciate his knowledge and different background that he brings to the table. So thanks for joining me today, Connor, and everyone watching. Have a good rest of your day and Happy New Year's, everybody. Go make those resolutions and get into the gym, maybe. All right, buddy. Appreciate you.
All right. Yep. Sounds good, man. Have a good rest of your day.
All right. You too. See ya.
Bye.